Hi, Sam. How you doing?
Hi,
Sam.
Isaac. Remember, no swearing. I'm serious, AJ.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sam, hey, Sam, what day is today?
It's Tuesday.
Oh, what's your favorite day of the week?
It's normally Tuesday.
So It's going to be a great episode.
I think it'll be a good episode. I wouldn't say great.
We're setting the bar low for this one.
Sam, for everyone listening, you can just, skip 45. Just keep skipping through. Sam has lowered the bar on this episode up front.
We're not
You
trying
said
to
when
grade
you logged on, you said I look gloomy, and I'm in an irritable mood today.
Well,
so.
I promise you by the end of this episode, you'll be feeling jolly good.
This is Topline.
This episode of Topline is brought to you by Affinity for Salesforce. Affinity for Salesforce brings powerful automations and deal-driving relationship intelligence to the Salesforce CRM and extends these insights into your email and browser. Automate the creation, update, and enrichment of Salesforce records and use your network and relationship insights to find, manage, and close more deals. To learn more, visit us at go.affinity.co/pavilion. That's go.affinity.co/pavilion.
Okay, let's get into
What is this? Is this number 39 or 40?
Number 40, guys.
40.
When we're coming up on 52, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Topline.
Wow.
I know.
Like only 1% of podcasts make it past episode 21. Isn't that
Yeah,
wild?
I think you should. It is wild.
Yeah.
And we're twice that. We're over twice.
Twice that.
No,
Yeah.
we're almost twice that.
Wow. There are another
right.
few hundred to go. Okay, so let's jump in. We have a really fun docket today, and we're going to start with Carta. So Carta has had a really interesting couple of weeks. The background here is that Carta's core business is cap table management. But in 2021, they decided to build a new business line, which would essentially be the NASDAQ for private markets. And the thought process was that they wanted to enable investors and employees to be able to trade shares in privately held companies the way you can for publicly held companies. This still happens right now, but it's not systematic. And so they wanted to create a systematic approach to this. The growth they'd experienced till then in their core business, as well as this grand big vision, and the fact that we were in a low interest rate market enabled them to raise $1 billion at a $7 billion valuation for this. Now, last week, a startup founder accused Carta of using private information from its equity management software to use on the stock brokerage side of their business without the startup's consent. The employee essentially breached a firewall that they had established between these two sides of their businesses. And this led to the fiasco because the founder, whose business was impacted, posted this on Twitter. It went viral. Carta CEO Henry Ward came out swinging, as he usually does. It's very entertaining. But eventually, Carta realized that they did make a massive mistake over here and that this could lead to a customer exodus. And so eventually, Carta announced that they were shutting this business down. It was only doing $3 million in revenue at the time, so it didn't take off the way they thought it would. And they apologized for the issue and put the employee on leave. Now, this has been covered a lot. All In's covered it. Scott Galloway's covered it. A lot of people have. One of the themes being discussed is how these two business lines were not complementary and actually in conflict with each other. The other thing that has come out of these conversations is that the reason they probably were not able to break through with this business line is that founders don't want this to be happening. Founders don't want the shares of their businesses to be traded in the private markets willy-nilly. It affects their prices. It creates confusion. There's even regulation around how many non-employees can own shares in a business. So they don't want that. And then others have said that, and Scott Galloway is in this camp, he says that, well, this being shut down creates the opening for somebody new to come into the equation and build a business here because there's a space to build a valuable business. AJ, the premise of the business is that Carta is shut down is that people could trade quote-apart shares without you knowing or having a say in it. Investors have always loved the idea, especially venture capitalists, because it creates liquidity for them. Right now they invest and they have to kind of wait for 7 to 10 years. This would create short-term liquidity. But it seems like founders don't want this. As a founder, how do you feel about this?
Well, next week in Scottsdale, I'm going to be hawking QuotaPath secondary shares left and right. Shares for
buyers,
sale.
no
Shares.
buyers, no bid on your ass.
There should be stalls like across CEO Pavilion.
I'll give you $50.
$50, $50. Go to once, go to. When this news came out, I think there was two things that I was thinking about. First off, as a part of my Series A pitch, I actually went back and watched Henry's series. He did it live. He did a Series A pitch live.
Oh wow!
And the thing that you said is that this has always been part of his like grand vision of the secondary market. Now, is his grand vision to create $3 million of revenue? No. So he still is going to have a restart. I think this is his like 8th or 9th restart on the secondary market.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, he's every time they have like a new birth or a new round of Carta, Henry's like, okay, now's the time. We're excited. Like he tried to use COVID as that time from a digital standpoint. He's used crypto as like a starting spot for it. So and I really appreciate that because he's a founder who's not giving up on his vision and is going to like figure this out. And he's probably right. There's going to be a massive secondary market at some point on the private market, and that will exist. However, he's clearly in the wrong on this situation. Like, and I'm glad that they've admitted it. To answer your question, I'd be pissed. I'd be super frustrated. That's a very frustrating I was talking to a friend that's an investment banker, but has worked at both a corporate bank and an investment bank. And like the Chinese firewall that you referenced, like that is very serious. You do not mess with that firewall. And I'm just curious as to like, how did Carta end up having someone that didn't truly understand the concerns and challenges that exist with this? All of that said, I don't think it's I'd be pissed, but then like cooler heads would prevail. And I don't think it's that big of a deal because you have right of first refusal. So you have a ROFR that the company can buy back those shares. I think I would just be more frustrated of data. It's a data integrity issue of like, someone knows something about my business that I didn't communicate and I didn't talk to. That's like information existing out in the public market that should not be out in the public market.
But what about like, if you take this instance out of the equation, like this was a mistake, the firewall was breached, they should say sorry, they fixed it, done. But then the essence of it is a private market for secondaries, right? Or for shares in private companies. In that situation, you as a founder of an early or growth stage company, are you okay with that existing? Because doesn't that create, like when you're a publicly traded company, you have a lot of regulations that you have to deal with. There's a regulatory burden that you have to take on that comes at a cost of time, energy, and money. You have to manage investor relationships, right? Like, do we want early stage businesses and growth stage businesses to have to deal with versions of this then, if that type of market really exists?
Look, I've never worked for a public company, so I'm probably not the right person to actually answer the question. However, I do remember a talk by Jeff Weiner gave, CEO of LinkedIn, that said when they went public, this is before Microsoft took them private again and bought them, take them private. Obviously, Microsoft's a public company, but bought them. They had all of this regulatory thing, and the lawyers were like, "Hey, Jeff, you can't say these things during company stand-up that you've been saying." And he's like, "No, I'm going to do it anyway, and just figure it out. Like, it's your problem to figure out," kind of thing. And I think founders and CEOs and entrepreneurs are like, they're more in that bucket. So I don't know if this creates an unfair advantage, which I think is the question that you're asking here, Asid, is like, is this?
I think he's saying he's not unfair advantage. I think maybe he's saying it's expensive, time consuming, and a pain in the ass. And that as part of your CEO duties, presuming that there is liquidity, there will be a regulatory regime that emerges to monitor it. Do you want that to be part of your job, AJ?
If I'm learning,
so eloquent, like that's such good words.
Asid, the whole reason I went through that long spiel is so Sam could come in and clarify. And I'm giving his day a boost.
Running around in circles.
Sam is a Cancer, and I read his horoscope, and he's not allowed to have a bad day today. Cancer is.
Good to know. I'm Cancer too.
I'm very emotional. I am a Cancer in all meanings of the word.
Yeah. So the answer is like, I don't know. I think that there's a learning and growing opportunity. If that was the market and that existed, if that was, I would look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Personally.
You?
I don't know what, Sam.
No, I agree with AJ. I think I think this whole thing is a little bit. What are the foundational like assumptions behind all of this, right? The foundational assumptions, I guess, are like these companies are ours. We can do with them whatever we want. Anybody that's interfering with that is messing with my mojo. Get the hell out of here. Don't, and like that's what the guy that was complaining, that's his view of the world. Like my world, it's my cap table. I'm just using you for data storage. Like get out of the way. And I appreciate that. I understand what he's saying. But I come out on net, like, and by the way, Scott, there are businesses that provide secondary to private companies. It's just
more
the issues are sort
type of businesses
and funds to funds. There's a secondary market for funds to buy from other funds that exists.
Fundamentally, there's like two things for me. The first is that, to your point, Asid, like I want there to be more liquidity. I think that would be a good thing for the world if there were more liquidity. But the point that you're making is one of the correct ones, which is, okay, but if there's going to be liquidity, there need to be protections. Do we want private companies to be regulated by the SEC? Do we want there to be even more rules around what kinds of information? Do we have to start, publishing transparent financial statements and having them audited by Ernst & Young or KPMG? All of that regulatory burden that you're talking about. And I think that's sort of like saying, do we want new cancer treatments if they have to go through the existing, healthcare system and be $2,000 every time you prescribe it? And I guess I would like there to be a different, better world where that regulatory regime is less expensive and more efficient and more automated. But I think it's better to have more liquidity than less. I think it would be a boon and a boost. I think there's a big weight on private market enthusiasm from employees, maybe less so from investors, although I think that's true too if we see the funding rounds. But employees, particularly executives, are really frustrated that equity, it doesn't seem to be real in the sense that, because that's the second part of my point, right? The second part of my point is like all of this control redounds to the benefit of who? It redounds to the benefit of me, the CEO, and the board, right? And we have all of these compensation packages and all of these people that have equity, but there's all these provisions and there's liquidation preferences and there's, right of first refusal. And there's all these, and there's of course the expiration of ISOs 90 days after you leave the company and you have to formally convert them into NSOs. And what does all of this mean, this complexity? All of this what's the reality, right? So here's the reality. Me and AJ own a certain percentage of the business on a fully diluted basis. And for most of us, we own more than that. And why is that? Because every time an executive leaves that doesn't exercise their equity, every time we part ways with somebody, if they don't have double trigger acceleration or some kind of acceleration, even if they do own an option and the company gets acquired, it's not necessarily true or de facto stated that that option converts into equity at the time of the acquisition. So even though my nominal percentage on a fully diluted basis might be X, it's really greater than that because of all of these weird equity rules. And all of it is really a way of me saying that I'm paying somebody something, but not really paying them that thing. And so anything that would make equity even if you can only sell it for $2 or whatever, even if the valuation was much lower than what you would prefer it to be, wouldn't you rather have liquidity wouldn't you rather have the option of selling it for something? And of course we don't. Most of the time, the point that I made, like you go to a secondary, you go to whatever I forget those companies, but somebody will remember it. But
Forge,
maybe that's one of them. And then there's another, there's Equity Zen, I think is one of them.
Yeah.
There's no market for me and QuotaPath, but there's probably more of a market for QuotaPath because they got Insight behind them and HubSpot behind them. So there's probably more of a market, but even then there's not like some massive market for our equity that's out there. And the reason that there isn't is because it's really, really risky because we don't have any reporting requirements. One of the last point that I'll make, which, I just think is wild. So let me tell you like some stories because I've been thinking about this a lot. So, it's like, and I don't want to name names, but it's really so messed up. It's so messed up. So I was in a precarious situation back in 2015 and I was fired, and I was fired from, and it's ironic because it's this company that purports to create liquidity for private market companies. But here's what happened. I was
Sam's
fired.
not allowed to swear on this show, so he just kept his mouth closed
so
when he
much.
went to say the
That's
name.
not what I'm debating. I'm debating whether I name them. And I don't feel like doing that right now. So But the point is that I was fired, and I asked the board, which included last week's guest, I asked that board, could I have an extended exercise period? Could I have longer than 90 days? And they said no. They gave me a few more months in severance. They would not budge on the 90-day expiration. I was broke. Like, I didn't have any money. And so I wrote a very big check. And for me at the time, it was a very big check. So today it wouldn't have been a bit, but it was about 35, 40 grand, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, again, remember, this is at the time. This is like this is 2015. Is 10 years ago. Just very different financial position, debt from my first marriage, all this stuff, right? And then I had to pay, AMT or whatever, like taxes on the nominal appreciation. So I cut another. I remember getting a call from my accountant saying like my bill for the IRS that year was like $65,000, which I didn't have. And so here's my point. So I wrote that check to that company. I never heard another word from them. I never heard another word. And that company later did a recap and was sold for 10 cents on the dollar. The equity was priced at 10 cents on the dollar, but relative to the most recent valuation, I think my equity was basically worth what I paid for it. Okay. So I nothing. I got nothing. Now I called the CEO who, we have a difficult relationship, and he said, well, I thought Gunderson sent you the docs. And I said, Gunderson didn't send me crap. They didn't send me doodly squat. And it sort of evaporated because I just don't have the brain power right now to try and chase it down, because there probably isn't any liquidity in the first place. But what is the point that I'm making? So somewhere nominally, I own like a point of this much smaller company that's still around. I haven't heard from, the people that bought the company, which was like a family office that consolidated it down and bought it for 10 cents on the dollar. I haven't heard from the CEO. There is no public record of equity ownership. And my point is this is all in support of Carta. That's my point. In support of Carta. Why? Because companies that use Carta, this company did not use Carta. I can log in. There are my shares. There is no there's no government agency that regulates or that nominally is the blockchain or the balance sheet or the ledger for private company transactions. And I think that there needs to be continued improvement, which is why Naval created AngelList.
Yeah.
Because I think there needs to be increased. I do believe in liquidity, but for there to be liquidity, we need a system of record.
Yeah.
We need everybody to acknowledge the reality and not say, well, I thought I sent you the docs when they never sent them to them. We need there to be a marketplace. We need there to be, if not audited financial statements, then some kind of agreed upon framework for saying that we trust this company and here's the credit rating of this company or whatever it may be. So I believe in all that stuff. I don't believe that all of it should redound just to me and AJ as the founders and CEOs. Like, that's great, but we're offering people equity. It should mean something. Right now, it's actually kind of it's not a scam, and I'm going to make my shareholders a lot of money. It's not a scam, but some people could treat it like that if they wanted to, and they could issue options insincerely. And what I mean by insincerely is the same way that you say your OTE to a CRO is 500K on agreed upon targets, but they never are going to hit the targets. And what you really intend to pay them is 350. And so I just think that's what I think. I think that, like, I agree with this CEO that was all pissed off that this is an instance where there was a breach of trust. But broadly speaking, do I believe in Henry Ward's vision? Yes, I do. I think it's better for us to keep working on this problem of transparency and liquidity in the private markets.
Sam, you're hitting on some really, really good, fascinating topics here. And I'm so grateful for you bringing this up. I mean, part of this goes back to the accredited investor. And I know this was like when Kickstarter and all the platforms were all the rage, or like anyone can invest. And I know Obama had some policy that helped like loosen this up for people. And the premise of it was really, really positive. However, it ultimately is like, oh, you can do the friends and family round now with it. Yes. However, like we know this as companies grow and scale. One, if you're not keeping your pro rata, you're going to get diluted down. And so if the company actually materializes, you're probably not going to get what you think you're going to get for it. It's like, oh, I invested at a $9 million cap. The company sold for $500 million. You probably are going to have some level of a multiple, but if you didn't invest in follow-on funding, which all early stage investors have the right to do as major investors, you're not getting that return. The second thing, Sam, that you brought up is information rights on this. And
it's wild.
It is crazy. You're absolutely right. Like, we are all transparent and we work really hard. I agree with you on insight. Like, I do an audit every year. I have like very, very clear and transparent guidelines in terms of what we can do and on our fiduciary responsibility. However, there are lots and lots of founders that took the money and ran with major funds, and like they took a lot of people's money during that, and that is why you said scam, because unfortunately that did happen, and that will happen because there's lots of people that invested in 2021. I'm an angel investor in 35 companies. Like, do I keep track of all of them? No. Do I help out when I can? Of course I do. And that's what I look at as like the learning and development opportunity that I get from it. It's a really small portion of my portfolio today, and that's okay. And I'm totally okay with that. The second piece of it, and then I'll let Austin jump in because I know we have a lot to say on this topic, is Carta. I'll say I use Carta.
I use Carta. Yeah. I'm a happy customer. I think they do.
How many emails did you get this past week on cap table management?
So many.
So many. And Austin said like, hey, this could cause some like loss of customers. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to cause anyone. Why? Because I give a 10 on NPS on Carta.
Yeah.
Do I log into Carta every day? Absolutely not. But it's a compliance software that's there when I need it, and it helps me bring transparency to my shareholders, and that's all I care about. Does those two things, I sleep great at night.
Also, it's the record. My QuotaPass shares are in Carta. My Behavior shares are in Carta. Like, I don't want a 10-cent competitor on my cap table management. I want someone with, even though their reputation has suffered, like I want a big company. I want a big company that's not going to go out of business. I don't want some rinky-dink competitor. It's not just a spreadsheet for me. It's the authority of, see, I friggin' own this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting about this conversation is I came in thinking that it probably shouldn't exist. And the reason I thought that was I was thinking of it as an operation.
What shouldn't exist?
The secondary market, like this business line that they shut down. I was like, good riddance. And the reason I thought of it was I wasn't thinking of the employee and all these things you guys have discussed. I thought if you look at a human being, right, the way that law applies to them is different based on their age. And so when you're under 18 and you do a certain thing, the law will look at you differently. When you're above 18, it'll look at you differently. And I think I look at companies going through their life cycles similarly. I think the regulatory burden that a company that is trying to find product market fit and is, under 10 million in revenue, the context switching they'll have to do, the cost they'll have to incur, the distraction that they'll have, the things they'll have to placate to, right? Like so many of the reasons why companies hold back from going public is they don't want to run their businesses on these short-term quarterly cycles. I thought all of those things not being there for a company before it hits critical mass is probably a good thing. As you guys were talking, I completely changed my mind. I think you guys completely nailed it. You're 100% right. This should exist. Employees should have. I've heard numerous stories similar to Sam, your story, and this market should exist. So I appreciate you guys sharing that.
And I think, sorry, go ahead.
Adrian. No, Sam's story is just, I agree with Austin where I've heard that story so many times. It so fucking sucks. But guess what? Those founders, those CEOs.
Let's bleep out the F-bomb.
Oh yeah, we bleep it. This is how we learn. We
bleep it. But we keep going.
The funds that do this, you learn who those people are. We have been founders, operators for 10, 15 years. Sam, will you ever work with any of those people again?
Well, I would work with the board but I and the CEO that I'm referring to, it's just not right. It's not right that I gave him a meaningful amount of money.
Yeah.
And nothing. I've heard nothing. And he's like, oh, well, I thought Gunderson sent it to you. I'm done. He's out. I think, what happens, venture capital is still the most generous form of capital that's ever existed. There's still not that many people that would ever create an asset class where you write these massive checks to early career entrepreneurs because you hope that it works out. And all of the structure It's still not private equity level structure. All of the structure in terms of, preferences and and ISOs and NSOs, it's still a more generous than not asset class and investment. There are still fewer strings than you would expect. But and I think if you imposed more transparency, more liquidity, you would take some of the air out of the balloon. Valuations would probably go down a little bit. But I think the transparency would be better for everybody. And I still want there to be investors. I still want them to make money, lots of money. They're still taking on massive risk. I just want it to be a little more fair. And by fairness, I just mean transparent and open. And that's why I'm a Carta fan, because there needs to be some platform that says, I can tell you that I wrote a much bigger check to a company that I left more recently, and they use Carta. And if they didn't use Carta, I do not trust these people.
Oh, wow.
I do not trust that they would even say that I was still on the cap table. But they do use Carta, and so I do. And I'm not worried. I'm not worried about them stealing my money, because I have a platform. It's not issued by the federal government or the state of New York, but it is a platform that says you have an ownership, you signed it, we're keeping it for you.
I guess the second part of this Carta situation that I haven't heard discussed, but it could be interesting to kind of click into, is that if you look at the last 3 to 4 months, Carta has been in the news for reasons that they don't want to be in the news for, right? And this is the latest one. This is a large business that's a very important part of the ecosystem. 50% of startups are Carta customers. And so they're a really important part of the connective tissue, as you, Sam, were talking about, of this ecosystem. And they've got all of this stuff happening outside that probably has to have some level of impact on the mood of the internal organization. And so how does one deal with this? That, AJ, if you, as a CEO, when this stuff is happening on the outside and it's affecting you internally and it's causing mayhem and all of that, how do you deal with that? Like, is this just when it happens, you just take a bunch of hits on your chin, you try to bide some time, and then eventually things settle down?
I've been fortunate not to have something this public happen, and maybe just the scale of it. I've never reached the scale that Carta's at. I guess that's fair. But I have had litigation or lawsuits against my company and myself in going through it when I felt like it was a really unfair characterization of the situation. But that's just how lawsuits work. And so, of course, you have what you can and can't say. So I'm sure, Henry, first off, you cannot just put out a message without consulting people. I have to believe that he consulted lots of people in this.
Sure. Yeah.
But that doesn't always happen. You remember the Expensify CEO
I heard that he didn't consult that many people.
Yeah, and that doesn't surprise me too much from it. I would just say that
which message though, the first initial responses, or when they actually came out with the official?
The official one was that, but then that's the problem, is that you have this first response, and this first response has an authenticity.
How he's
authentic. Right?
Yeah, he's authentic. He's not manicured. He'll come out. He's got a fight in him. I like leaders that have a fight in them.
But you asked the question. Sure, Asad, 100%. But you asked the question about internal.
Yeah.
And so you have now factions that probably get created internally.
Interesting.
That are for and against the situation. And that's what I'm trying to that's what I am thinking about as a founder CEO. Hey, I've worked on personally being really passionate about something, writing the memo, sending it to ChatGPT, and getting a response back. I'm taking that advice to the 10th degree. I'm not getting consensus per se from everyone, because you can't be consensus driven, but I am being thoughtful about the message that I am sending out. The second thing I think you're doing is internally, you're being transparent. You're doing what Sam said around this, and you're just being completely open and honest about it. Now, that could come off a couple of different ways. I've heard a CEO that was that had a really traumatic family situation and ended up getting divorced through the situation, and just told his team and company that he was going through this. And I think it was okay, but it ultimately caused some sort of angst on how do we act around this person going forward. So I think the other part of it, you just have to is be human. Yeah, it was a weird. I mean, it was
he hired a bunch of wrong people. Then
But just be approachable, just be human about the situation. And it's like that, like, you know, we're all people, we're all human beings. So I think that that's the other thing. So there's the external versus the internal. If you're being internal, then the message that you sent, you have to be okay that that message might get out into a Twitter thread or whatever, but you have to be okay with it, because you have to get in front of the communication in an authentic way as fast as you can while being thoughtful about it. It's really probably the most challenging thing you could possibly go through as a leader. And I say this as someone who's never gone to anything that scale, but I empathize with someone that has. Sam, I'm curious if yours differs. Does this differ from?
Well, Sam would have had the experience from GLG. Like, GLG was going through a lot of tumultuous things based on the book I read. And so this factions point that AJ made was really interesting. Can you click in on that? Like, have you ever been in an organization where something externally has led to this, like, creation of fractions within the business? And once they exist, is there anything you can do, or do you just have to ship out the people that are in the wrong fraction and hire new people?
I was at GLG when the hedge fund industry took a bunch of major hits for insider trading, and the accusations were that GLG facilitated some of that, even though GLG's compliance and regulatory regime, but specifically their compliance regime, is best in class and the most aggressive of all of the expert networks. In fact, other expert networks were competing by saying they would get you fresher information, which was a euphemism for, and they probably still do. First of all, it's not just factions. Once you get to a certain level of success, there's just haters. You know, there's people that are
critical,
not supportive. There's always people at every level in every organization, including the three of ours, that think that they can do it better, or that we're all stupid or idiots. There's people that are told you so's, that says, you know, you got in this trouble and you should have known better, and I told you and you didn't listen to me. And so what's my advice for the CEO? So GLG did turn it around and weather the storm. And how did they do that? Well, first, they had the funds and the resources to be very, very aggressive about being present in the conversation very intentionally. What that means is they went down to DC and they created a lobbying arm, and they created a corporate, whatever you want to call it, legislative affairs. But it was just a bunch of people whose goal was to talk to the people that were accusing them of stuff, talk to the SEC, talk to Congress, educate them about what actually happens in the expert network industry, which is what all the big companies do, which is what Sam Altman's doing around AI right now. And then the other thing you have to do as a CEO is, but I'm not an expert in crisis management, but I would say, like, there's respond. There is definite. I don't think fighting back instinctively from the hip is going to be typically the right approach. And I think most crisis people would say, don't make the issue bigger by being such a jerk that you are obscuring what could be a very simple thing and saying sorry. And so I think most crisis management that I've heard is say you're sorry, fix the problem, and move on. And then the last point I would make is, and just understand, to sort of your other point, Asad, which is we're in a multi-year journey. Setbacks are going to happen. You have to process it, and you have to try and move on. And you have to understand, and I've learned this personally, and, you know, in my life recently, in both professional and personal contexts, you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. You're just not. And you have to find a way to not let that kill your sense of confidence, your sense of peace and inner determinism, and just your overall happiness level, right? Like, we're on a multi-year journey. These slings and arrows are part of the journey. They're a sign that you are on the right path in some ways. Because if you weren't doing anything interesting or challenging, you wouldn't have any problems at all. The people that just stay inside all day and don't do anything, they don't get in any trouble. So I think you just have to take a long-term view. But I will say, try not to create more problems for your organization in the act of dealing with the crisis. And I think that's probably the main criticism of Henry Ward, isn't that he's not a visionary, or that he doesn't have a vision that we all agree with. Me and AJ definitely agree with it. And we changed your mind on it in the last 20 minutes. but it's don't create more work for your team.
Yeah.
You know, and that's also feedback that I've gotten. Hey, you're creating more work for us by saying what you said on Topline. Can you just keep your mouth shut?
I thought about this while we were talking, and I did have one situation that was kind of, I would say, as close as it could get. My first job out of college was a company called Meltwater, and Meltwater didn't really have a digital presence. We didn't have a CMO. We did have 800 cold callers and salespeople. And the way you got a job at Meltwater was you came to a group interview that was very ambiguous as to what it was. They didn't tell you it was sales. The role you were interviewing for was international management trainee. And you were in a group interview with 15 people, and it was your first job out of college. And then they like would bring you back the next day if they liked you, and then they would hire, like, out of the 40 people that came in, they'd hire 2 people. And so you show up and, AJ, here's your phone, you're making cold calls and you're doing all of these things. And you were on the phones the end of the first week. And as you can imagine, that was like not a great first experience, but like I learned sales just trial by fire. And you're with 20, my manager was 23. That manager was 25. There are 50 offices around the globe, all like this. And what ended up happening was there was a blog called the Meltwater Anti-Blog that former employees wrote about all of these experiences of like 25-year-olds going around and doing all things 25-year-olds do and being mismanaged. But the problem also was because Meltwater didn't have a presence, didn't have a CMO, when you Googled Meltwater, the very first thing that came up was the Meltwater Anti-Blog. And how we did logins or demos is we told people to go to meltwater.com. So when you went, I was on a cold call, like, hey, can you go to meltwater.com? They would Google Meltwater and they're like, is it the first one that says Meltwater is the devil and sucks and is terrible? I'm like, no. Scroll down a little bit. You'll find
the second one.
Scroll down on
It's not that one. It's not that one.
I love that you all are laughing at this. This is a true story. This is very true. And so you had to click on the second one. And we would talk about this as employees, but the CEO of the company never addressed it. It just eventually like went away. He sued, he had lawsuits. We heard about this through like the grapevine of all of these things. But we as employees at 21 were like, what kind of, like, we're questioning what kind of company are we working for that doesn't take that? So that was one area where I was like, it created this area where it's just under this subculture that existed that was like, unfortunately, very negative to the company we were working for, even though we were having good experiences. I look back at it very fondly, very positively, but it wasn't addressed. Like, I guess this company is like a shady company because they're not like addressing this and they can't figure out their SEO where this comes up. So
it's just really, firstly, that's a brilliant story. Secondly, it's really hard to turn people around once those factions, I think, get created. Like, I've been in organizations where, but it was very early on, like while I was in university, where you had factions in that organization. I think you just have to then do a reset. Like, I don't think you can change so many minds and point of views. But this was a really interesting topic. We have a lot more to discuss, but first, a word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Clary, the only unified system purpose-built to help you run revenue. Spending your Sunday nights manually inspecting deals and jotting down actions for your sellers? That's the old way. Clary's platform surfaces the insights sellers need and allows them to take action, all in the flow of work, so nothing ever falls through the cracks again. See how Clary can help you run revenue like a pro at clary.com.
So last week, Cloudflare had a really interesting week as well. So they were doing a round of layoffs, and an employee on the sales team recorded herself being let go and posted it on social media, and it went viral, as these things usually do. She received a call from 2 people who I don't think she knew, and none of them were her manager. She was told that she did not meet Cloudflare's expectations for performance and hence was being let go. The issue is that, or at least her argument is, I'm relatively new. I joined in August 2023. I was ramping up. All of my ramping up targets were activity-based, and I was crushing all of them. My manager was telling me, you're great. And so this is what was in her mind, and she was really pushing back. And HR on that call really stumbled, and Cloudflare looked like they just didn't have their things together. Eventually,
Good job.
Yeah, Sam didn't appreciate that, but I tried hard. Eventually, their CEO responded to this on X and said that they fired 40 salespeople out of 1,500, which is normal. He doubled down on the fact that she was being let go for performance, but that how they executed this was horrible and they need to be better. The last part that's interesting as I was reading into this is that apparently her manager called her right after this happened and said, I'm so sorry, I'm really taken aback by all of this, and was just acted like he had no idea what was going on. And so this is getting a lot of attention in our ecosystem, some on Cloudflare's side, and many people have tons of sympathy for her as well. Where do you guys fall in terms of how this was handled, her posting this on social media? The implications of this on her career are something I'm interested in us clicking in on, because I think this happens, right? Like people get this emotional reaction to when they feel they're being done wrong by, and social media makes it really easy to amplify how you're feeling by posting something like this. I think what people don't talk about is when you do this, you go viral. What's the negative of that? Does this come into consideration when you're trying to get your next job? Sam, like, how do you think about that? Like, if you were interviewing somebody and turns out that they posted a video online and went viral about something like this, how do you compute that information?
My basic bias is that if everybody's doing one thing, then I'm skeptical of it and probably want to do the other. And my bias is that when this woman filmed herself knowing what was going to happen, my initial empathy and sympathy is probably going to go to the HR people and not to her, to be completely honest. And I just find, I hate to be such a grouch or a curmudgeon or to sound so cliche, but it just seems like I find that there's a certain kind of human mentality, and it's not generational, but it can be sometimes best articulated or encapsulated in like a young person or a Gen Z or whatever, where the idea that there's hypocrisy trumps any kind of broader discussion about the general value of the conversation. Or my point is that it was like she was catching them in a bad move. And so the world has celebrated her. I feel like most people are like retweeting, reposting, saying that she's a hero because she was done wrong and she hit all her activity metrics, even in that video, she's like, well, I sent out a bunch of contracts, but they didn't come back because of the holidays. So she's already like making salesperson type excuses. But I guess so like, would I want to hire that person? No, I wouldn't want to hire that person. I don't want to be filmed all the time when I'm trying to have a private or sensitive conversation. Does that mean that Cloudflare handled that the right way? No, I don't think they handled it the right way. Is it the HR's people's fault? No, it's not the HR people's fault. They were given, that's their job, is to have really difficult, crappy conversations like that. And they were just trying to do their job. And is it some evidence of Cloudflare's horrible decision-making ability? I think it's probably like everything, like this organizational inertia where it was a snowball rolling downhill and one person made a decision and then another person made a decision and somehow she ended up on the list. So I'm not saying it's fair or just. She was probably wasn't fair, but I don't think that makes her a hero, And I'm not saying that she's saying she's a hero. I'm saying that
because it gets celebrated like that, right? Like, or not.
I know, it's like there's this victimization, this like, that's my point about this sort of ideology, right? Of like the victim is the hero because they are a victim. Yeah. There is hypocrisy in the world, therefore the hypocrite is evil. And it's like, well, all big systems have hypocrisy built into them. There's no thing that is ideologically pure. There's terrorists that are using iPhones made in China by Apple. Like there's no product you buy that every atom of it was created in exactly the way that you agree with, right? The world is full of contradictions and hypocrisies, and it's mostly comprised of good people trying their best, including this woman.
Yeah.
And so that's why, but I find that the eagerness to capitalize on this as some good versus bad, right versus wrong, evil versus innocent, that I guess I've developed like a resistance to it. I guess it just makes me, and the easiest way to articulate would be irritated. And when Sahil, like the way that I know that I have a problem with it is because he's aggressively posting and gets 1,000 likes and makes the world seem
I'm
so
sure
simple.
Sahil's one of our most loyal listeners, so I'm sure he'll.
We should have him on. He can just
Oh my God.
say simple, controversial things that are instantly disproven.
Oh my God.
I'm interested in Asid's take on this, given his, the hiring and recruiting,
totally.
and Asid, like how I tend to. Well, I'll pause on mine. I want to hear from you on this.
I worry that there's no analysis done on the lives of these people that post things like this and go viral, where they land up later on. I think it really hurts them. And I think the challenge is that all that anyone sees is the virality of that moment. And we as humans like status, and we like, being in the spotlight. And if I think that creates a really dangerous situation for people that are very early on and young in their careers, and they end up doing something and they have this moment where they get tons of sympathy and they're in the spotlight. But what's the 5-year, 6-year, 7-year effect on their earning capabilities? It really worries me. And to the point where, we might actually go back and do this research. We might go and find the 10 viral moments and go and see like what happened to these people eventually. So that's like one thing. The other thing is, obviously, like I think layoffs happen. It happens. Sometimes mistakes are made along the way. I don't think anyone was being evil over here. I think there was some execution related mistakes, like the manager not being involved, and they'll learn from that and move forward. And they've received a lot of flack for this. I do think Cloudflare has a little bit of an HR problem, and not for the two people that were on this call. They're like just junior mid-level people. They were doing their best, right? They were in a tough position. Whenever you talk to HR people that are part of layoffs, it's a horrible moment for them. So I feel for those two. But a little while ago, if you guys remember, I sent you guys this tweet. It was part of a docket. We just never got time to. We had more interesting things to discuss at the time. But it was a tweet from their CEO where he said, it was the end of the year. He's like, I just sent the last offer for the year. And then he highlighted a couple of KPIs. He said, we had 1,162,526 applicants. The offers were extended to less than 0.1% of the people there that applied, 90% offer acceptance rate. Companies are just collections of people. Our team is incredible and continues to get better and better. Happy New Year. And I thought, well, if a go-to-market leader of any sort comes and gives you those conversion rates, how do you feel? Those are not great conversion rates, right? Like those are horrendous conversion rates. And you have to assume that if you're getting so many people at the top end of your funnel, you're not targeted enough in terms of who you are bringing into the funnel. How do you maintain a good experience for those people that you have to reject? Are you able to review all of them? Like do the math of like 20 seconds or 30 seconds per profile. How many hours have to go into just looking at all these profiles? And so I look at that and I think this guy, he doesn't need to know this, but what he's posting is a flaw in how they are operating, and the HR team hasn't flagged that to him. They're not talking about fixing this, they're celebrating this. And then they've had this mistake where there wasn't a hiring manager on this. So I do think, like, when I read into this situation, I think for a company as great as they are, and they are a great company, one of the greatest ever built, they need to fix their people function.
Well, the thing that you said is just fascinating of there's no data on following up. That's the true tragedy on this, is just like, those are human beings. We as human beings are following up. I have somewhat of a story, but it's way, I guess, worse in the grand scheme of things. And also like social media it's kind of a, we don't, I don't know if we'll remember this, and I'm not sure how this is going to follow that person, and I don't know that person's name, so I'm not even going to look them up at this point. But back in 2012, we were doing a little bit of research on a contact we were going to work with. I'll say the name of the company now. I think it's okay. DraftKings. That's 2013, 2014. And we were looking at the PR person. We worked with a lot of PR people. And this person had worked for I think it was BlackRock. It was definitely a big fund, and they were going to Africa. And on the plane, they tweeted something. Before they got on the plane, they tweeted something that was very, very derogatory. I'm not even going to say it, but about
this was famous.
This was famous, yeah, about African population. And by the time she landed, yes, it was. And it's not
like racist.
You can find it. Anyone that's listening can go find this of someone tweeting. They landed, and by the time they landed, it was like they had gone viral. They didn't even know. There was a whole basically section that, like, I think it was like a hashtag, and let's say this person's name is Jesse doesn't even know, like, kind of thing. And it was really, really big deal. And this person worked at DraftKings. When we found out that had happened, we killed the contract. We were like, you know what, we're not even going to work with this type of person. And so, like, that, and they won't know that that's the case, but there's definitely a thing that will follow people that have this type of viral. You found it? Ossid found it?
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
that's crazy.
But that's on a totally different spectrum. My point being is that there is absolutely data and a repercussion of these pieces of it that is, I go back to, like, the human component, where Sam's right. This isn't a good or evil situation. There's a lot of complexity to this situation, and Cloudflare is a company. They'll be okay. They'll be fine. Like, I don't like, the empathy gene never falls to companies. Like, it falls to the people, to the human beings, certainly the HR people doing their jobs, but actually to this person and to this woman. And I hope they learn from it, and I hope they get better at their craft, at their job. I hope they do go back into sales. I truly do. Or maybe they become CS. I don't know. Although we've talked about that doesn't exist in this year. But, like, I hope they learn from it, and it helps them get better, and they look back and say, like, hey, this is the situation, and they use it as an interview story. That was what I hope for.
Oof, it'll be interesting to see what happens with all these people. Okay, last topic is going to be more operational. Sam went viral. Do you consider that viral, or are you so cool on LinkedIn where you're like, that was just a Saturday tweet?
I felt like it got the attention it deserved.
Oh, look at that. Oh, that's a man with some confidence. And so the essence of the tweet is, growth at any cost, GAC, is dead. In 2024, if you scale up, push into 100 million in revenue, you must move to profitable, efficient growth, also called PEG. Now,
by the way, I made these acronyms up. GAC is real. I think I'd seen it. GAC. I'd seen it, but I made up PEG. I
like PEG the most. And so
I thought we said there's no swearing on this show.
I swear, writing this topic, I laughed so much because I was like, this can go in so many directions, but we won't do that. This is a business podcast. Okay, this obviously struck a nerve with our community. So Sam, can you walk us through your thinking here? I think the main question is this. It is really easy to identify problems. Like, you can sit down and in an hour, you can fill 20 pages of problems in your organization, and everybody in the organization can do it. And I think what people sometimes don't realize is that the real hard part is not identifying problems. It's identifying which of these, out of the 500 problems that we have, which are the 2, 3, 4 that we're going to focus in on. Because if you do too much and you spread yourself too thin, you can't really affect anything properly. So if you want to have significant impact in any direction, you have to pick fewer things, go after them. I think what people have a really tough time with, as I've been talking to people about just this general topic, is that how do you figure out which things to do, and how do you create a culture where everybody's not trying to do everything? Like, do you actually have to create a list every year of, here are all the things we're not going to do? Guys, we know these problems exist, but we're not going to do them. How do you operationalize this, Sam?
Here's how we did it. And I have a great example. So, by the way, here's for the listeners that are not readers, click the bell on my LinkedIn profile. It's linkedin.com/in/Sam F. Jacobs. But here's my point. In a profitable, efficient world, you can't do everything. And so my recommendation was reduce your strategic focus. And when I say strategic focus, I'm being intentional with those words. These are large investments that you're making. So I don't just mean like a task list of like, we're not going to have this meeting, we're going to have this meeting, but like list out what are the big initiatives. And then what I would say is figure out and have some framework for figuring out from a fundamental perspective, are these profitable initiatives or not? And so, for example, and we've talked about this, but last year we went through the process of recutting our profit and loss statement against our major initiatives. And at the time, our major initiatives, and we still look at our P&L this way. It's not how we report it to the IRS, but we have an events business that is funded by sponsorships. We have a membership business, and we allocate certain costs to that. We have a corporate membership business. So there's an individual membership business and a corporate membership business. And then there's a learning business. And then, of course, we also knew the size of our product and engineering investment on an ongoing basis. And so when we recut the business by business unit, effectively, I talked about it recently. There was a meme. There was an idea that our corporate business, because it does not have the best retention right now, that we should quote unquote get out of it, right? And that's not what we decided to do, because when we looked at it, even with bad retention, it was profitable. It's very profitable. In March of last year, it was unprofitable because the size of the team dedicated to creating new business and supporting it was too large relative to the churn and what we were making from it. But if you reduce the team size, you can actually afford high churn, right? And the point of, which I even spoke about today in a class for Pavilion, churn is services businesses have extremely high churn. High churn doesn't mean you don't get to have a company. It means you can't afford to spend as much on sales and marketing. And so, the point is, over the last year,
that's an interesting point.
Sam. That's a really good point.
Oh, well, thank you.
You should write about
that. We should talk about that.
Yeah, well, because that's basically every
also part of
business.
That's the part of the PEG framework that I want to outline to people, which is that in a GAC world, no, I'm serious. In a GAC world, the only thing that matters is the multiple on revenue. So everything has to be subscription. Everything that's not a subscription is pushed to the side because you're shooting for 10, 20, 30 times ARR. In a profitable, efficient world, your balance sheet doesn't really care what type of revenue it is. It just wants cash to pay the bills. And that's why services, event sponsorships, all of the other business lines that we were in, I don't know what our multiple is on them. It's probably not very high, but I'm not trying to sell the business right now. What I'm trying to make sure we do is that we're profitable. So anyway, the point of the post is, hey, look at your investments, group them, if it's new product lines that you're launching, if it's new geographies. And that's a very easy one. Hey, we want to go into the UK. Okay. Look at the size of that investment relative to what you expect to get back from it, figuring out, and then I have a framework in the post, but it's a Jack Welch type thing. Can you be number one or number two in that market? If not, are you going to lose so much market share that you're going to cede something indefinitely that you'll never be able to recover? Have some framework, it could be a SWOT analysis, whatever, but then size your bets. And that's my point is, what does it mean to not do everything? It means look at where you're spending money and find new ways of grouping how you're spending money relative to the money that you're getting back and figuring out where you can contract. And I will say, so I wrote this long post and Alec, my LinkedIn editor, he said, well, I get this for startups, but is this really a thing that large companies have to worry about? And right at that moment, somebody in our UK chapter posted that Chief, which is a nominally a competitor, had just pulled out of the UK. And after making a big to-do of entering the UK, I think last year or the year before. And you can chuckle or snicker at that, but I view that as a sign of prudent capital allocation and, making a tough choice and maybe it's embarrassing for them, but they've got to run their business in a different way than they used to. And it was a perfect example of what I'm talking about. They said, we can't win this market. It's not the same customer. We can't spend, if we look at it on a P&L basis, it's not making us enough money. We can redeploy that capital to another business line. Let's just focus on dominating the US. It's a big market. Let's fix churn there. So that's an example. That's what I meant. And again, and the other post that I'm writing, exactly to your point, Asad, is about the value, different kinds of revenue in a PEG world, because in a PEG world, you're not in a GAC world, the investors control the company. Therefore, the multiple on the revenue is the most important thing driving your strategy. In a PEG world, your customers control the company, and all you care about is making more than you spend so that you can be profitable. And you don't really care if it's or you care less. You care less. You still care, but you care less. Services revenue is much more acceptable in a peg world because you just want to be profitable.
Sam, I just liked the post, so you're going to get over 1,000 likes now.
Were you like,
No, I'm
was
really
it at
gonna go viral.
$9.99?
I was waiting on it. No, just all the people are now going to see it that are in my world because I liked it.
Look at that. I thought it was really impressive traction for Saturday. Like,
no. I agree. Well, I have a question here that's kind of going to prove out my point. I think I have an assumption on the question I'm going to ask you, Sam. When we first started Topline, you talked about this spreadsheet with 500 KPIs that you looked at. Do you still have that spreadsheet?
Yes, but we're constantly revising it down to like the core metric, and the core metrics change. But yeah, we have a top sheet, and the top sheet is like.
But it doesn't have 500 KPIs on it anymore.
No, it does not.
Look at that evolution. Okay, that has been a fun episode. We're gonna close it with some shout outs. AJ,
oh my gosh, shout outs. Shout out to the Austin infrastructure or whatever, or all the people that didn't go to work in Austin because it's 40 degrees and that's apparently too cold and they had to close and shut down all the schools. So I made it to the office in 5 minutes when it usually takes me 35 minutes. Yeah,
they shut it down at 40 degrees.
I mean, it's 33 degrees, but they shut down all of like Austin. Austin is just in like lockdown right now because it dropped below 40 degrees down here. That's not a great shout out, but you put me on the spot and I'm looking outside at Austin.
Oh my God, Texas, that's just like -1. Okay, so I was before you joined the episode, I was saying, Sam, tonight is going to be -30 Celsius.
Yes,
everything is open. My Sherry
which,
went
by
out
the way, is almost -30 Fahrenheit. That's like the number where they like
where they cross. It's where they cross.
do
Exactly.
Yeah,
wow. They cross. Isn't that the craziest thing that they cross?
So
right there. So I know the number. I love that you Googled that. But yes, it is not that cold and everyone's fine. But shout out to Austin for figuring its non-swearing word out.
Well, shout out Austin. I'll go and then Sam, you close it for us. So I found a post by Todd Caponi, which I thought was really interesting.
I love Todd, by the way. He's
Todd
a great guy.
Great. Like he does good work. Like the history of sales is something
he's passionate about sales.
He's truly passionate about it, right? Like I love his content. And so he basically put out a post about the first ever quota that was set in history. It was set in 1890 by a company called NCR. And they would sell cash registers. And essentially, they came up with a quota-based system. It was territory-based. You would essentially analyze the addressable market and what was achievable, and that would be your quota. There was a point system, and your quota would equate to 100 points. They then devised the Top Performers Club. And in 1906, this was called the 100-Point Club and eventually became the Doorknob Pullers Club. Why? Because they had a slogan that said, the more you pull, the more you sell. And so I just think this is so cool that he puts this information out there. I thought it was really cool to see. I thought of AJ when I read it in terms of obviously the connection to quota. So shout out to Todd for doing what I think is really important and really interesting and really good work.
I will give, I'm trying to read more. So I finished 2 short books. I'm going to give, this is a bit controversial. I read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius.
Why is that controversial?
Yeah, why is that?
Because it's not very good.
It's
not very good. Ryan Holiday, paraphrasing Stoicism, is much better than Marcus Aurelius in the original. So I just found it a little trite, but maybe that's because I've been sold these ideas so aggressively for so long. But my true shout out, I don't know if y'all are out there, if you know who Ursula Le Guin is. I hope you do. Ursula Le Guin is one of the most famous science fiction writers of all time, and she wrote some truly incredible books. She wrote The Left-Handed Darkness, which is this incredible book about this species that is it's not that they're transgender, it's that their gender shifts through their fertility cycles. So most of the time they are androgynous, and then during their during their mating period, they either become male or female, but they can become both, and then they revert to androgyny. It's a great book. She wrote a book called The Dispossessed. And what I just finished is this awesome book called The Lathe of Heaven, which is really almost like a Philip K. Dick book about a guy that has dreams that can change the nature of reality. But she's really just a wonderful writer. And if you like science fiction, she is canon along with, Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, maybe Frank Herbert, who wrote Dune. So Ursula Le Guin, she passed away, but she's really an exceptional writer, and I encourage you to check her out. I
love that. I'm going to buy some of these books. Look at that.
You should buy it. The Dispossessed rocked my world.
But not the Marcus Aurelius book.
Not the Marcus Aurelius.
Marcus Aurelius, we're all going to die. Try and be good, even though people are jerks. There you go. You don't have to buy it.
You did it.
No wonder it didn't take off as like a philosophy on its own, and it required another person to come and be like,
he was paraphrasing the existing Stoic philosophy. So he never purported. I mean, this is just his journal. So in fairness to him, he wasn't setting out.
Yeah, he was writing to himself, and we all judging it.
We all decided to read it.
My journal is really not very well.
If you read my journal, you'd be a little underwhelmed as well. So,
okay, that's the show, guys.
All right, we'll talk to you on Thursday for Topline Hotline. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.
This episode was brought to you by Affinity for Salesforce. Automate the creation, update, and enrichment of Salesforce records and use your network and relationship insights to find, manage, and close more deals. Check out Affinity at go.affinity.co/pavilion.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Topline. To learn more about the trends, news, and developments impacting the world of B2B SaaS, head to joinpavilion.com, where more than 10,000 of the world's top go-to market leaders go to achieve and unlock their full professional potential.